Joe and I are going to go over the free agent list from MLB trade rumors and if we think any of these guys make sense for the Mariners to go out there and sign. And that's it. That's all we're going to do on this podcast because it's going to take us a minute. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 130 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Be sure to give us a 5-star review. And this is the Hokyo Reacts episode of the podcast. I hope I said that right. Hokyo Reacts. And before I get to Joe, Lyle told me that if all you guys like and subscribe to this channel, eventually all the content creators we're going to get together and buy the Mariners. So make sure you're liking and subscribing and whenever you can. Also go subscribe to our new channel, MLB Mojo, link down in the description. Joe, I'm done chilling. How are you?
And say you're just dishing it out left and right now.
That's right.
Asking for a 5-star review, listen on the preferred, like, you're doing it all, and I'm proud of you this day, because there was a time where I asked you to do it once and you yelled at me. You did. I'm gonna break the fourth wall.
You don't hold a grudge at all, right?
Not holding any grudges, not one, not a single ounce of grudge in my body. Personally, I hate that movie. Right. It scares me. Yeah, the free agent list. It's a scary. Just like the Grudge, the free agent list can be scary because we know that John Stanton doesn't want to spend any money.
It's a bad strategy.
He basically went out there and said, "Hey guys, this is dumb. Don't spend money. We'll win other ways." And they haven't shown us like the final product of winning without really spending a lot in free agency, I guess, in the way that we all want them to, which is making the playoffs. A winning season to them, I think, is the bar that they have set, but it's going to be, I think, a long and arduous journey through this free agent list of really kind of narrowing down who we think are, I guess, like actual targets, because there's guys that you can dream on in this. We're gonna scroll by some names and we're gonna say like, oh yeah, that guy could make sense, and then you realize he's gonna make more than $20 million annual average potentially, and then the dream goes out the window. I think what really does need to happen, John Stanton needs to win the lottery. Shockingly enough, a billionaire needs to go out there and win the lottery, win some more money, maybe do a little bit of sports gambling on the side to really like supplant whatever money he thinks that he doesn't have and really just like pony up some there. And the best place I can think that he can do that is with BetOnline. You need BetOnline for being a sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. Postseason baseball, but most importantly, the NFL regular season is here, and BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And if you think that you know your stuff, get in on the $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. Head to the website today to get in on the action, and remember, BetOnline, the game starts here. Colton, the MLB trade rumors list starts at a position that I don't really think the Mariners have a need for. Is there anyone in the list of catchers that you really want to highlight, I guess, as far as people that could make sense for Seattle? Should they, maybe if they trade Mitch Garver, maybe one of these guys could make sense as an avenue of like a small bridge to allow Harry Ford to develop a little bit more. Maybe they bring back Sebi. I'm joking, right? We don't need to bring back Sebi Zavala. I really don't think there's a single name on this list that like, one, is a big enough transaction to really have an impact, but also like I don't think that they're going to move Mitch Garver, so I don't see catcher really being any aspect of someone that they're going to bring in this offseason, let alone from free agency.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Cal's the guy behind the plate. I would like them to bring somebody in that can catch more often, and if Mitch Garver is still as bad as he was, he's like not even a good backup catcher. So there are guys on this list that I think make sense on a minor league deal. I don't think they should bring any in on a major league deal. I think that at the start of the year it should be Cal Raleigh and Mitch Garver, but there are names on here. I mean, we've seen what Kyle Higashi-Yatsa has been able to do in the was able to do in the playoffs. Higashi-Yatsa, you know, like Mike Piazza. Do you get it?
Yeah, I was like, what name are you trying to say?
Kyle Higashioka. Yep.
Yeah, I get it now.
I mean, there are, of course, other guys on here. Like, I mean, if they brought Sebi back on a minor league deal, fine, right?
I guess.
A guy that does stand out to me is Reese McGuire. He has a pretty nice stroke. And I think that down in the minor leagues, he's from the Seattle area, grew up a Mariners fan, so it makes sense to have him in your organization, maybe just kind of waiting in the parking lot before if the Mariners do needed to go get a guy, maybe in spring training or something like that.
Maybe in handcuffs, dude. Jesus. First base is an actual position of need, Colton. But how deep in their bag, like how deep will the Mariners go as far as like spending money at the first base position? I don't think there's really a lot of guys that are fully worth it. And I think some of them really do depend on, I guess, like buyouts or like opting out of
Mhm.
remaining years. Like Cody Bellinger's on this list, a guy that you were very, very high on off season, who spent a lot of the off season just kind of waiting in limbo and ended up going back to the Cubs and hasn't opted out for the first year, can opt out now, but he's got 2 years of $52.5 million. I don't think he opts out of that. I think he stays. So I don't really think Cody Bellinger is a super viable option here. I really, I think if you're going to go to like a guy at first base, you're looking at people that you've mentioned in videos before. I look at Justin Turner, I look at Carlos Santana as like the veteran presence on a 1 year deal for anywhere between like $7 to $10 million. I'd be okay with. I think the if it goes beyond 10, I'm out on both of them. But I think I could rationalize spending that much money on either Turner or Santana. I know a lot of people would be like, that's way too much, but I think depending on how the market kind of shapes up, like I could see either of them also getting 10 million from a different team is part of the problem there. And then looking at like maybe more of like the richer side of it, like Christian Walker is a guy that a lot of Mariners fans have been high on. We kind of talked about it on stream on Saturday, which we've been doing instead of Sundays now, where Walker's probably 3 years, 54 million, like $18 million average, maybe goes up a little bit to 20 million if a team really wants Christian Walker's services. Where are you at with first base?
Yeah, I mean, Christian Walker, I think, is like the guy in there. I don't think Pete Alonso is really an option for the Mariners. I think he's going to be way too expensive. In terms of guys, I mean, the way I'm kind of looking at this list is guys they should be in on.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Walker, Pete Alonso, um, like Paul Goldschmidt. I think is an interesting one. Like if the Mariners view him as a veteran presence, he had a pretty bad year, in 2024, but could he put up better numbers than say Justin Turner for you? It's possible. It's certainly possible. I don't know how much it would cost to have Paul Goldschmidt on your team. Um, Reese Hoskins has an $18 million player option with a $4 million buyout. Not sure if the Brewers are going to pick that one up. Ryan O'Hearn is another one as well. I Bleav he had a pretty good year actually. $8 million club option. I would assume that is going to get picked up if he did have the year that I think he had. And then Anthony Rizzo is a guy who $17 million, obviously, at the time of recording this on the injured list, so he may be back for the American League Championship Series. I don't know if they pick up that $17 million club option going into 2025 because they're going to want to allocate as much money as they can, them being the Yankees, to Juan Soto.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if they pick up a $17 million club option for a 35-year-old Anthony Rizzo. $6 million buyout, so maybe you could get Anthony Rizzo, again, another veteran guy who's been there, done that, and a guy that I think might fit the park pretty well, and a guy who still has some pop left in that bat. So Anthony Rizzo is a guy that I find very interesting, but I think Christian Walker is the one where if I could have one guy at first base, that's who I would want in 2025. Second base is interesting because we know we've talked a lot about the Jorge Polanco option over the past couple of weeks, and he's a guy on here, of course. He's a $12 million option, 750K buyout. There are other guys on here. Gleyber Torres is one that gets talked about a lot. Maybe a reunion with Adam Frazier, huh? Brandon Lau's the guy that I honestly think gets traded this offseason. $10.5 million club option. I think the Rays would like to not pay him that because it's the
Yeah.
Rays. And so because of that, I think he's the guy that gets traded. Is there anyone else that stands out to you here?
The OMG Mets, Jose Iglesias. If he doesn't go back to New York and they don't give him like a key to the city for the vibes that he's brought, I think that's a great veteran presence type of guy. I don't know if that's necessarily like the guy that's gonna really kind of push the Mariners over the edge. I know Prima is in the comments right now, like begging for Brandon Drury, but had a terrible year. A 35 OPS plus was worth -2 wins on reference. So like, yeah, it's terrible.
Drury was?
Drury had an
Wow.
awful year, like an absolutely terrible year. -2 WAR, a 169 batting average, and 325 at bats.
Oh,
On
that's the
top of just
Angels
like
for you, man.
very, very poor defense just in general. Like obviously as a utility guy, like had a great year beforehand, like a 114 OPS plus. Like looked like a pretty solid signing for the Angels, but they got the I guess like opposite side of that coin in the second year there. I think the one that is the most interesting, honestly, like could be like a bigger addition is Gleyber Torres for me. Like you've talked about him for I think two off seasons in a row now of like a guy that could make sense as far as like a an offensive producer at second base, and has had his bad moments defensively at second base, like admittedly. I'll say it. Perry Hill can fix him. Okay, I'll say it every time. I don't care. I don't care if it's redundant at this point. Perry Hill can fix him. I don't know what his contract would look like. I mean, I'd say, like, do you think he would get more money annually than Christian Walker? If we're saying Christian Walker gets 18,
No.
do you think Gleyber gets less but a longer deal?
I would say Gleyber Torres, you're probably looking at 14, 15, maybe $16 million a year, but maybe like 4 or 5 years.
I
I would
think
assume that Christian Walker only gets like 3.
Yeah, I think a 5-year deal makes sense. He gets to go into free agency at like a veteran age of like 33 to 34, depending. So I think that, like, I agree on like the length there. And he's not a guy that I think has performed well enough to earn like a 10-year contract at age 28 kind of a situation. I don't
He had
think,
a 101 OPS plus this year.
yeah, like he's not like gonna break the bank, but also like at the same time, it's like, what other options do you have? Like, I don't know if you could get him for what you'd be paying Polo, like 12 million if you did pick up that club option, but there are some names in the second baseman that are very interesting, but I really think that the trade market is where the Mariners might dip into for that
Right. I
more
mean, and
so.
with Gleyber Torres, I mean, he's still 136 strikeouts in 20. Like his strikeout rate wasn't terrible in 2024, only at 20.5%, career 20.3%. Like he's not a guy that strikes out a whole lot. When you look at his career numbers, he's a 112 OPS plus guy. The only year that he's had an OPS plus below 100 was 2021, where it was at 93. Otherwise, he's been a pretty solid producer throughout his career. But again, defensively for him, he also posts all the time. I mean, the let's see, 154 games this year, 158 last year, 140 in 22. Lowest is 127 in 2021. He was a rookie in 18, so I don't really count that. But yeah, I think that Gleyber Torres is a guy that makes sense for the Mariners. I don't know if the Mariners make sense for him is the problem there. And so because of that, I would assume that he doesn't sign with the Mariners. I would agree that it is probably a trade route. Shortstops, Joe. There's only a few names on here. Obviously, the big one being Willie Adames. Do you think there's any opportunity that happens?
I really just don't see the like that them going that route unless you think you move Adames later, like to a different position. But I think at signing a guy who's probably going to get a 6, maybe 7-year deal over $100 million, like locking up that much money into a position where you are very prospect rich, very top end prospect rich as well. I don't necessarily know if that makes a lot of sense from the Mariners standpoint. Of course, Adames is a great player, had a great season, like had a great run with the Brewers, but I don't know if signing him makes sense logistically from the Mariners point of view of like, then they're now blocking whoever their like prospect shortstop will be. Like if Colt Emerson sticks at short and then you have to move him to third, if that affects his playing, or maybe you move Adames to third at that point. Like I think it can make sense, but then you have to move JP to second for the next 2 years, and how does that affect Cole Young, like in the grand scheme of things? And sure, we can't really like be banking on the fact that Young will be a fully MLB producer in the next year. You can't bank on Colt Emerson really being that same thing until what, 2027 as like a full MLB producer. Like maybe 2026 he makes his debut, but really putting up those big numbers, like I don't know if we see it for another two full seasons. So Adames can make sense. I just think the amount of money that he is going to warrant from other teams in free agency, like there are going to be teams out there that need his services more and will pay more for him than what the Mariners will be willing to like put up. I really liked Ha-Sung Kim last offseason, but he had a terrible year. And he also, I think, just hired Scott Boras as like his agent. So it's like that kind of went down the drain, in my opinion, as like far as what you can get out of Ha-Sung Kim. He's the second best guy on that list for me, but the bat just really wasn't there this year. And defensively, it was kind of a mess at times. Whereas in the previous year, like everything looked like it was clicking on all cylinders. So there is an $8 million mutual option with him and the Padres, but I don't know if the Padres pick it up. I think that their infield is crowded enough and they might want to move on from him because I don't know what they're really going to get out of him next year if they hold on to him. And it's just kind of like a wasting asset at that point if they don't see him like kind of like bouncing back.
I think that Kim is pretty interesting because obviously he was injured part of this year.
Mm-hmm.
On the injured list to end the season, he hit 233, 330, 370, with a 700 exactly OPS and an OPS plus of 96. Honestly, if the Mariners had gotten those numbers out of JP Crawford, fine. Like
Yeah.
11 home runs, 47 RBI, stole 22 bags, stole 38 last year. Like strikes out 18% of the time, walks 10.4% of the time. Like, I mean, this 2024 was his lowest ever strikeout rate and his highest ever walk rate. But he just was not hitting the ball. And I don't think he was hitting it in the air. Where's it at? Where am I
The
blind
ground
here?
ball and fly
Fly
ball
ball
percentage.
percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just I don't know. Ha-Seong Kim, it just didn't work out for him this year, but that's a guy that I would definitely be interested in, depending on how much it's going to cost. Because I would assume that they do decline that $8 million option. If you can get him for less than $8 million and stick him at second base, I don't hate that. Again, whether or not he'd come here, I'm not sure. 29 years old. He'll probably want a couple of years in that deal. But
He's also
moving
going
on
to
down
want
to
more.
third.
I think he's going to want more than $8 million as well. Like,
You think so?
oh yeah, I think given what he did in 2023, they will try and paint that as like his main year and use 2024 as an outlier with injury riddled in there as well to try and like frame that narrative. I think he'll get more than $8 million.
It's just hard to look at a year where he put up 107 OPS plus. You know what I mean? And say like, yeah,
Ichiro made
he
a
was.
career out of it, buddy.
That's true. That is true. We've talked about that before. Yeah, I mean, he had 17 home runs, 260, 351, 398. MVP 14, by the way. Gold glove as well for Ha-Seong Kim. Moving on now to third base. Obviously, there's the big guys here. Big guy, I guess, and Alex Bregman. No. So we'll just put that to bed right now.
Moving on. Yeah.
Moving on. Paul DeYoung. No, I mean, really the only guys that are interesting here are guys that have club options. I mean, Yoan Moncada is not going to get that club option picked up. He could be a fun guy to add as like a minor league contract,
Mm-hmm.
just in case he somehow does find a way back to what he was previously. But the only other one here, in my opinion, I mean, Donovan Solano, I guess. I don't know if I want him over there at third base. Is Eugenio Suarez. I think it's interesting to think about whether or not they're going to pick up that $15 million contract. I would assume they do, them being the Diamondbacks.
His second
but,
half, I think, earned him that option. But if they view that money more valuable elsewhere and they can replace him within house, they think that could lead to like declining that option. But yeah, I think that second half at least earned him like a longer conversation with it.
Mm-hmm. And because of that, I don't really think he's an option for the Mariners. Maybe via trade. Maybe the Mariners can trade and get Gino back. Because I mean, God knows I would love to have Gino back. One of my favorite Mariners ever. Be a lot of fun to bring him back, and he loved his time here. And so I think that he's really the only other one at third base that really makes sense for the Mariners, other than Alex Bregman. And Alex Bregman is a firm no from me.
Yeah, the money owed, and then just like I guess like enemies to lovers, like like that whole like archetype in storytelling. Like Bregman in a Mariners uniform just feels wrong. I get that the player, like his archetype, makes sense for what he checks all the boxes what Seattle needs. It's just his name is Alex Bregman. He's worn a Houston uniform for the last however many years, and it just would not sit right with a lot of fans. If I could like completely just erase my like Men in Black, erase my memory, like what Alex Bregman, who he is, yeah, that's like the perfect player the Mariners could sign this offseason outside of the best available free agent. It's Alex Bregman. I look at Donovan Solano as a like not. I mean, you mentioned third base as like being the problem. He split time between third and first, and he dude just hits like straight up. Like if we're looking for a guy that's maybe similar to like that Justin Turner type that just hits and a veteran was part of that Padres club that I mean, yeah, they choked away the division series against the Dodgers, but Donovan Solano in 2024 put up a 112 OPS plus in 283 at bats for the Padres, hit 286, 343 with a 417 slug and a 760 OPS. Like, he put up back-to-back years of a 760 OPS in Minnesota in 2023 and then with San Diego in 2024. I think that's a guy that, again, he's going to be cheap. He's not going to cost you a lot. You can play him at third in a pinch. You can play him at first pretty safely, and he can DH for you. And just, he's not going to hit for a lot of power, but he can just hit. Just flat out, that's what he does. I think that's probably like another guy that seems realistic in my head about what they would want to spend. I think Moncada is like too much of a risk, even if like he's not going to cost a lot. He's still like he's 30, was a once like highly touted ish prospect, but like I don't know if it's worth it like trying to get some sort of like bounce back on a White Sox player that has fallen off that far.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not good enough to play for the White Sox,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty rough.
What does that say?
Left fielders, a lot of former Mariners on here, and we got our first look here at Juan Soto. Former Mariners that we have on here, Teo, of course, coming off of his monster season, Tyler O'Neill, as well as an option, and Jesse Winker, of course. I look at this. The hard part for the Mariners is their outfield's pretty much set, right? With Julio, with Randy, with Victor. It's very tough to look at the free agent outfielders to say these guys make sense. But in the end, you need bats. And like if you can get better by adding an outfielder, you figure it out.
Mhm.
Whether that be a DH position, like maybe you bring in, I don't know, Tyler O'Neill, and he's like, I mean, he's pretty good defensively. So at that point, maybe like Randy DHs or something like that. But they split time there some way, somehow. Like there are options there. I think that the guys that make the most sense that would actually have a chance of coming here is Tyler O'Neill. Maybe Jerks and Profar, but I kind of doubt it. Otherwise, maybe Alex Verdugo, but I don't love that. He had a pretty rough season. So I don't know. Those are the guys that kind of stand out for me, other than, of course, Juan Soto, which the end all be all is if you can sign Juan Soto, do it.
Mhm.
Like plain and simple. We all know that's not going to happen, but he is the guy I've talked about time and time again. I wanted him more than Ohtani. Like that is the guy that if I could have one player on my team for the next 10 years, it's Juan Soto. And yeah, so just putting it out there into the universe. Maybe Soto Mojo is a thing. Put it out
I know Lyle is loving that one.
pounding the table.
Exactly. Yeah, the thing with Soto is another aspect of it. Dude, you mentioned it for Glaber. Soto's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
20 like since 2020. I mean, you can go back to his rookie season, 2018, age 19, 116 games. Age 20 season, 2019, 150 games. COVID season, 47. 2021, 151 games. 2022, 153 games. 2023, played all 162 games. This year, 2024, played 157 games, has helped the Yankees, maybe even led them, because he's been their best postseason bat, I would say. He's been better than Judge. He's led them to the championship series. Bro put up a 288, 419, 569 slash with a 989 OPS, a 178 OPS plus. He's going to finish third in the MVP more than likely, behind his teammate and Bobby Witt. Like, dude is the definition of like pure hitting talent. 41 bombs, set a career high. Obviously in Yankee Stadium, the Yankees should give him a blank check. They should give him as much money as they gave Aaron Judge, or like maybe not as much, like as close as you can get without going over like the Price is Right type of situation. So you make sure you get that bid as far as that is concerned. Of course,
if I'm the Yankees, I give him the Aaron Judge contract.
Right.
That's what I start with.
It's just, he's younger than when Judge went into free agency, and he's just gonna be there. Like he's gonna be there longer. Sure, he might turn into just an all-time like full-time DH by the end of it. But you said it best. If you have the opportunity to sign Juan Soto, you sign Juan Soto, because he is the easiest. Yes, he makes my team better right now for every single team. It's just not every team's playing in that same with the same, I guess, like restraints.
In the same tax bracket.
Sure, the same tax bracket. I do like Tyler O'Neill. I think that one can make a lot of sense. I think, not to say that I'm glad that Jesse Winker hasn't said that he also hates the Mariners with his entire soul. Like he said that he hates Milwaukee. So maybe there's a little bit of reunion there. But I if the Mets like what what they've gotten out of him, I don't see a reason why they don't try and bring him back like on a short little deal just to like have him around again, because I don't know if he'll get like another prove it deal, or if a team will take a legitimate chance on him for maybe like a 3-4 year deal in his age 31 season. Like he's a strong side platoon bat at this point, but when he's hot, we've seen what he can do. He's helping the Mets. Same conversation about Soto, a little less of the severity there, but he helped the Mets get to the championship series. You know what I mean? Maybe not in the same exact ways as Soto did for the Yankees, but he did hit a second deck home run, Colton.
My brother in Christ, did you just compare Jesse Winker to Juan Soto?
Jesse Winky?
Did I say Winky?
No, that's a meme.
Oh.
You said Winker. You're good.
Okay. Well, way to ruin that. Anyway, moving on now.
I ruined it. You don't know the Jesse Winky meme?
No, I'm not on TikTok, bro.
It's not okay.
Moving on to center fielders now. And again, Cody Bellinger is here. Joe already talked about his opt out there. If he's a free agent, I would love it. I don't think he will be. So we don't really have to talk too much about that. Not a whole lot here. I mean, Harrison Bader might be interesting. Defense first outfielder guy. I don't really see the point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. No, honestly, none of these guys. I don't think any of these guys make sense, Joe.
There's like you said, the outfield is set. You've got Randy in left, you've got Julio in center, you've got Robles in right, you have Rayleigh as your fourth outfielder, I guess, as like unless he's playing first base. There's other options within the organization as well for a fourth or I guess like fifth outfielder type. If you look at Dom Kin's zone as maybe coming into zone a little bit more, like there's not a lot of room to sign an outfielder, especially while you're also employing Mitch Haniger more than likely, unless they find a way to dump his contract or he's a homie and he declines his option and saves the team some money and he rides off into the sunset, kind of a vibe. Even looking at right fielders, sure, Teoscar Hernandez, but like he's not coming back. Like he's going back to Los Angeles. Like
there's one guy on here that we haven't talked about yet in right fielders that I think makes sense.
Yes, like and I think where he makes the most sense though is not playing right field. It's DHing and playing a little bit of first base and maybe giving someone a day off in the corner outfield spot. And that is Tony Tater's Anthony Santander.
Yeah, I mean, what did he hit? Like 40? Was it 48 this year? 48 home runs.
I mean, it is his career high. I don't know if it's as high as 48. If that's true,
Might have been 44, but yeah,
44.
44. So yeah, he put up a career year again in Camden Yards. Pretty hitter friendly ballpark, but still, nonetheless, Anthony Santander has been a Mariners trade target for probably the better part of as long as we've been doing this. As long as Mariner Mojo has existed, Anthony Santander has been a trade target for the Seattle Mariners. And I think now that he's going to be a free agent, I don't necessarily know what the deal would be for him. I'd probably give him, I'd go 4 years. Like probably got to give him 20 plus, I would assume, right? Like
he's not going to hit the high water mark of like 100 million unless he gets like a really long deal. I would go anywhere between 17 and like 21 to 22 million dollars. And depending on if it's like a lower end annual average, you give him an extra year. But I think 4 to 5 years, maybe you give him a club option. The hard part is he is 29, turning 30. It's like in a couple days, like in 5 days. So like he'll be entering his age 30 season. So I think I don't know if like he wants this to be his last contract or if he wants to hit free agency again in a couple years. Like maybe you give him an opt out after the third season to allow like a little bit more incentive of like leeway in his favor and maybe go out and go to a different team. Like I could see a 4 to 5 year deal with like do a 4-year deal, an opt out for him in the third year, and then a team option in the 5th year if he's still kind of worth it in his age 35 season. I think that can make a lot of sense. This to me feels like it could be a Nelson Cruz-ish, maybe not as high as far as like production is concerned, but I mean, you look at the last 3 years running, a 120 OPS plus in 22, a 121 in 2023, and then his career best outside of COVID year, a 134 OPS plus in 2024, his first time being an all-star. Like dude just mashed. Like continued to just up his slug every single season for the last 3 years. Went from 455 in 22, 472 in 2023, past the 500 mark at 506 in 2024. This seems like a guy that no matter where you put him, he will hit, and he's a switch hitter too, so that gives you a little flexibility there as well. And I think it is a position of need to an extent. Sure, his main position is outfield, but you can stash him at first base for a game or two, and you can also just have him be your DH because Lord knows the Mariners need production out of their DH in 2025.
Frankly, I don't care like where you have to put somebody as long as they can hit the baseball. Like that's all I need at this point. Like I beggars can't be choosers. If you want to put Anthony Santander at second base, be my guest. I don't care. Go get hitters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Designated hitter. There are a few guys on here that I think are like JD Martinez. Like, he's probably on the tail end of his career. He did not have a great year with the Mets. It wasn't terrible by any means, but he's a guy who is definitely declining. It's very, very clear. We already talked about guys like Rhys Hoskins and Brandon Lau. Michael Conforto, I think, is a guy that's kind of interesting. Did not have, like, a career year with the San Francisco Giants, but is, again, a guy from around the Seattle area, a guy that does make a little bit of sense there. Again, Tyler O'Neill we see on here. Marcell Ozuna, let's put it out there right now. No.
We do not
I don't
want
care
Ozuna
that he hit
from
40
the Braves. Yeah.
yeah. So no to Marcell Ozuna. Smile. One guy on here stands out above the rest, Joe.
I'm surprised he's able to stand.
Wow! You put some respect
Well,
on Daniel Cornelius Vogelbach's name.
because he shouldn't need to stand, because he should be pulled around in a chariot.
That's right. That's right.
Everywhere he goes.
I'm
he
glad
can't walk anymore.
I hate you.
Daniel Vogelbach is not on this team in 2025. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen, bro.
What about a minor league deal?
A minor league deal, maybe. I think the hard part is he's a lefty. Whereas, like, I think if you're trying to bring in a minor league deal first baseman, you want them to be right-handed as a complement to Luke Raley, I would say. Unless you go left-handed and then you think that maybe like you're going to need that left-handed power bat off the bench or something, like that could be the avenue there. I look at this list and we just talked about Santander. I think the guy that stands out to me is like Justin Turner. Like this, like that's the one that I think does make the most sense as far as a return. You mentioned Conforto put up a 116 OPS plus in San Francisco, like pretty good. Like we'll definitely take that. The hard part is like getting him every day at bats. I mean, he played in 130 games, had a 438 at bats for the Giants in 2024. He's not going to play a corner outfield spot for you unless you need to give someone a day off. So like his time is just kind of, the issue is with a lot of these DH outfield types is getting them as many at bats, and is it worth sacrificing at bats for Randy or Robles to get Conforto a couple extra at bats? Like I'm not sold on that necessarily.
So you're telling me you don't want a career 106 OPS plus hitter?
Are you talking about Daniel Vogelbach?
A guy that had a 105 OPS plus in 2023. A guy that in 130 games in 2022 had a 126 OPS plus, Joe? You don't want that?
No, I don't actually.
I mean, 31 games in 2024, he had a 66 OPS plus. But I digress. Bring Danny Burgers home. Moving on to starting pitching here. This is a weird one, because we've talked a lot about the Mariners possibly trading a starting pitcher, but as of right now, it makes no sense to go out there and spend money on these guys when obviously the Mariners need to spend money on offense. But at the same time, they could, and this has been mentioned quite a bit, trade a starting pitcher and then use that money to go pick up some starting pitchers. There's some interesting names on here. I mean, Shane Bieber coming off an injury. I don't even know. Can he pitch next year?
I think he got Tommy John in April. So he'd be back like All-Star break, maybe.
Yeah.
Like similar timeline to Robbie Ray, I would guess.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. None of these guys make sense for the Mariners on major league deals. Minor league deals, however, there are some that do make sense. I mean, Marco Gonzalez on a minor league deal. Like, yeah. I'm okay with that. Other guys on here on a minor league deal. I mean, one that has always stood out to me, and maybe that's just because I used to think the world of this guy is Mike Soroka. He's only going to be 20. He's only going to be 27 years old. And he's a guy that pitched in the bullpen this year to a 4.74 ERA, 87 ERA plus. But
he was with the White Sox, right?
Yeah, he was with the White Sox this year. 79 innings pitched. I mean, it wasn't special, but his 2 years, like 2018 and 2019 in Atlanta, and even 2020, he was one of the best pitchers on the planet. 2019, he had a 2.68 ERA in 29 starts, 174 and 2/3 innings pitched for a 171 ERA plus. Like, so it's clear that guy's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, and if anybody can reach the potential for Michael Soroka, it's the Mariners pitching lab. Like, Mike Soroka is a guy that I think could be a tweak or two away from getting back to maybe not that exact amount, like maybe not a 171 ERA plus. Michael Soroka is a guy that I do think could make some sense for the Mariners, whether that be in the bullpen or as a minor league guy in the rotation. I'm not sure.
I think you could look to him as maybe like a Luke Weaver for how like he developed with the Yankees. If you turn him into like some sort of like really decent leverage guy, I mean, Weaver's been, I'd say, lights out as far as being a leverage guy for the Yankees. But if you can kind of, like you're saying, like 1 or 2 tweaks away, Soroka's not a bad guy to bring in on a minor league deal. I think the way to frame looking at starting pitching is like on the precipice of like, we traded someone, right? And then how are you looking to backfill that trade? I don't think you're going to trade Logan. I don't think you're going to trade George. It's probably not going to be Miller or Wu, even though Adam Jude in his article analyzing whether or not the Mariners need to trade Luis Castillo, blah, 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 or like, trade a starting pitcher. And he said, Luis Castillo's not the one. I think he does make the most sense as far as freeing up money. And then you take some of that money and you spend it on a starting pitcher. I look at Michael Lorenzen as a guy that could be a very nice number 5. Was on the Rangers, got traded to the Royals at the deadline this year. Missed some time, but I think Lorenzen's a guy that would be better than Emerson Hancock. He's not going to replace exactly what you lose from Castillo, but if you get some sort of benefit as far as offensive production back, and then you also just roll out Lorenzen every 5 days, like, I'm not mad at that idea. I think he's 33. You sign him to a 1-2 year deal, and then you just kind of like roll from there. But I understand that that's probably not the most realistic outcome, because you and I both think that they're not trading a starting pitcher. So it's like, what starting pitcher does make sense? And like you laid out, guys on minor league deals do kind of like really fit that aspect of like what they could do in free agency, as filling out the minor league rotation and calling up a guy for a spot start if you need one here and there. And Soroka's about as good of one as you can find in this list.
It feels inevitable that someone will get hurt next year, and you'll need to use some of that minor league depth. And if you use Emerson Hancock for a start or two, fine. But he's not the answer. Moving on now to the bullpen. This is right-handed relievers. I find the bullpen fascinating because we know, I mean, theoretically, the Mariners should have, Matt Brash, Gregory Santos, Andres Munoz, Colin Snyder next year at the back end of their bullpen. But we've talked about this a little bit. I personally think the Mariners should try to make like a stellar bullpen. They clearly can't figure it out offensively, so go make the best part about your team is the pitching. Go make the bullpen as lights out as the starting rotation. So there are guys on here that make sense. I mean, I don't think the Mariners are going to spend a lot of money on these guys, but guys that stand out. I mean, Carlos Estevez, Sir Anthony Dominguez has an $8 million club option, so guys like Jeff Hoffman, who we saw blow up in
But
in the playoffs.
his
Paul
value
Sewald
tanked.
dude, right?
I'd
I wonder, like,
I'd say Sewald's value kind of tanked too. Like, lost the closer's job in Arizona. Like, how much really that impacts their free agency? Like, we've seen them be at their best. We've also seen them be at their worst within the same calendar year. Like, I don't think it'll affect Hoffman as much since he's a little bit younger. He's 32, whereas Sewald's 35. But I'd be open to a Sewald reunion, because he had it figured out in Seattle and went to Arizona. And he wasn't like super sharp when they got him in 23, but there was moments where I think during the playoffs specifically, like he like kind of figured it out. But this past year was not pretty for him. So bring Sewald home, and it'll be time for Paul Sewald to pitch again.
And he doesn't have to be the closer anymore. Like, he just needs to be a middle relief guy. Like, he doesn't have to be what we knew him as before. He just needs to be okay. And I think if anybody can fix Paul Sewald, it's the Mariners. They could do it again. They already did it once.
Are we living in the past too much?
We might be. I don't know. We might be.
You just pounded the table for Daniel Vogelbach, so maybe.
and a Eugenio Suarez, and now
we're getting the band back together. We got to move on. We got to bring in Andrew Kittredge.
Oh my God.
I mean, that was a guy that we talked about maybe trading for in the middle of the season.
We did.
The very much so drunk dad at a family gathering throwing a wiffle ball type situation of how his delivery goes. I think he had a pretty solid year in St. Louis. Could just be like a random guy to bring on a 1-year deal for, riding off into the sunset as a pitcher in Seattle seems like a great way for a lot of these relievers to kind of maybe get one last hurrah. And Kittredge isn't a bad one in my opinion.
Yeah, and that, like, again, we've talked about it before. Like, when it comes to the Seattle Mariners, anytime they're talked about signing a pitcher, like, it's important. And the thing about how nobody wants to sign with the Mariners offensively, everybody probably wants to sign with the Mariners if you're a pitcher, especially if you're coming off a down year. Because if anybody can turn your career around, they have proven time and time again that it is the Seattle Mariners. And I mean, a guy like Kirby Yates is 38 years old, had a pretty good year with the Texas Rangers. Like, he makes some sense. He might want to close somewhere, so I don't know. He might be actually a little too high profile. But yeah, I think that he makes a little bit of sense. For left-handed relievers, I know there's one that you want to talk about possibly here. I mean, Tanner Scott, of course, had a big year with the Marlins and then going over to the Padres. Ryan Yarbrough, former Mariner, is always fun to talk about. But overall, there's nobody really here other than the guy you're going to talk about that makes a whole lot of sense when you already have Taylor Saucedo and you already have Gabe Spire, assuming both guys are back next year. I mean, guys will probably get non-tender, or not non-tender, but their options will be declined in Aaron Bummer and Andrew Chafin. I doubt they're getting paid 6.5 and 7.25 million next year. I doubt that. I don't know. None of these other guys really stand out to me. Tell them about your heartbreaker.
I will say, before I talk about Mr. Man, Tanner Scott should get the bag from the Los Angeles Dodgers because of how silly he made Ohtani look in that division series. The Dodgers should do everything in their power to make sure that Ohtani never has to face Tanner Scott again. Like, that is not necessarily like he can't hit him kind of a situation, but there were a lot of moments in those at-bats where Tanner Scott made him look silly, right? And I think he's a very high-profile reliever that will get a pretty sizable contract this free agency, and the Dodgers should be a team looking out for Tanner Scott. Of course, the guy that you're leading me to talk about, my dearly beloved, wanted him for 2 years in a row now, Brent freaking Suter. You're going to non-tender one of the lefties, Inspire and Saucedo. You add in Brent Suter, and your lefty problem's fixed. Doesn't throw the ball hard, but it doesn't matter. Bro gets outs. In the last 3 years, I'll even go back to 2021. We'll go 4-year track record, okay? In Milwaukee in 2021, a 135 ERA plus. You go to Milwaukee in 2022, a 107, so not as good. You're like, what's Brent Suter doing going to Colorado? Why would anybody want to go to Colorado? Oh, just casually putting up a 147 ERA plus in Colorado, by the way. Throwing 69 in the third innings and pitching in 57 games. Nice. And then he goes to Cincinnati in 2024, puts up a 140 ERA plus. Once again, the FIP's a little high, all right? Advanced stat nerds, I understand that the FIP is a little high, okay? It's not necessarily going to be pretty, but it seems like Brent Suter is a dude that knows how to pitch, okay? He's been consistently healthy since 2021. I'd say if the Reds are dumb enough to decline a $3.5 million club option, the Mariners should definitely be in on Brent Suter as a more, I don't know if I could say like lockdown lefty, but there were moments this year where we didn't know if we had that guy in our pen. Whereas in 2022, Saucedo was very, very good. Gabe Spire was very, very good. No, it was 23 where Sauce was better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Spire was good in 22. Sauce was good in 23. Who's it going to be in 2024? My answer, what I've wanted it to be the last 2 years as well, was Brent Suter. I just think unfortunately, I don't think he'll be a Red. Like, they'd be dumb, I'd say, to not give him $3.5 million because, like, that's a pretty reasonable cost for a guy that could put up a 140 ERA plus for the third year in a row. Like, giving you legitimate quality innings out of your pen, like, year in and year out. Like, that seems pretty reasonable.
I think that the one guy I would have said, had things gone a little bit differently, would have been Will Smith. You know, if he would have somehow gotten the Kansas City Royals to the World Series and won it, Will Smith. I don't care. Pick up Will Smith. But
somehow, some way, get Will Smith on your ball club.
That's right. The team at least he's always in the playoffs, even though he didn't play this year. But that's going to do it for all of the free agents here. Let us know in the comments down below if you guys like any of the guys on this list. We appreciate you guys watching episode 130 of the Hit It Here podcast presented by Bet Online, the Whirly episode of the podcast. And go Mariners.